The fighting between Israel and Hezbollah has reached a new level of intensity as Hezbollah fired more than 150 rockets deep into northern Israel, reaching one of Israel's main cities, Haifa. Hezbollah action followed a weekend in which the Air Force killed a large group of Hezbollah leadership in Beirut and destroyed rocket launchers and rockets around Lebanon, prompting the Home Front Command to issue new directives. The cross-border exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah expanded and now include Beirut in Lebanon and Haifa in northern Israel. Hezbollah launched over 150 rockets deep into northern Israel this morning and overnight. A major barrage of rockets were launched at Haifa this morning following 24 overnight launches at the Jazeera Valley, the terror group's deepest rocket fire into Israel since the start of the war in October. Some of the rockets fired toward Haifa were intercepted, while others impacted in Kiryat Bialik, a suburb of the northern coastal city, lightly injuring 3 people. The victims, 2 men in their 70s and a 16-year-old girl, were all taken to Haifa's Rambam Medical Center for treatment. A teenage driver was also killed near Ramat Yishai when he crashed his vehicle when the siren sounded. One rocket hit a home in Moreshet in the lower Galilee, causing damage but no injuries. This latest escalation brings 500,000 more Israelis into the line of fire. Home Front Command updated its guidelines for northern Israel all the way down to Haifa in effect until Monday evening, limiting gatherings of up to 100 people in closed areas and up to 10 people in open areas, and shut down all schools and beaches. It called on residents to stay within range of a bomb shelter. Since October 7th, Hezbollah has fired thousands of missiles into Israel as tens of thousands of Israelis remain displaced. Last week, the cabinet vowed it would return the residents safely to their homes. And over the weekend, the IDF has been pounding Hezbollah leadership in Beirut and attacked its rocket launching capabilities elsewhere in Lebanon. Top Hezbollah leadership were targeted and killed as they were planning another October 7th style attack against Israeli civilians. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Top Hezbollah commanders were eliminated in an airstrike, including Ibrahim Akil, the head of Hezbollah military operations, and Ahmed Wabi, the commander of the elite Radwan force. Much of Radwan force leadership was eliminated during a single meeting in Beirut, in which at least a dozen terror officers were targeted and killed. The IDF said Wabi was among those involved in the planning of a Hezbollah invasion of the Galilee. Hezbollah admitted that the airstrike killed 2 of its most senior commanders and 14 other members of the terror group who were meeting in the basement of a Beirut building. Following the strike, Hezbollah appointed senior officers Ali Karaki and Talal Hamia to jointly lead the terror group's operations division. Anticipating Hezbollah retaliation over the weekend, the Air Force also struck Hezbollah rockets and rocket launchers. An estimated 100 launchers and 1,000 rockets were destroyed on the ground before they could be fired. Israeli leaders are calling it a new phase in the war.
בימים האחרונים אנחנו הנחתנו על חיזבאללה רצף של מכות שהוא לא דמיין. ואם חיזבאללה לא יבין את המסר, אני מבטיח לכם, הוא יבין את המסר. אנחנו נחושים להחזיר את תושבינו בצפון בבטחה לבתיהם. שום מדינה לא יכולה לסבול ירי על תושביה, ירי על עריה. וגם אנחנו, מדינת ישראל, לא נסבול זאת. אנחנו נעשה כל מה שצריך כדי להחזיר את הביטחון.
The deadly strikes appeared to push Hezbollah into further disarray after the terror group suffered a pair of unprecedented attacks last week, in which thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies used by its members exploded. At least 40 people were killed and thousands wounded in those attacks. Those attacks are widely believed to have been carried out by Israel, but Israel has neither confirmed nor denied involvement.
And joining us now with more on the threat from Hezbollah is Dr. Barak Books, a senior research fellow and the Patterson Chair in Security and Intelligence, and a lecturer at the School of Communications and Department of Political Studies at Bar-Ilan University, a leading expert on Lebanon. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
So, Last week, we saw that pager and communications device attacks. Then over the weekend, Israel took out a significant number of Hezbollah commanders. But yet, despite this, we saw heavy barrages into Israel overnight and today. So what is the state of Hezbollah now? How much damage has the IDF inflicted on this terror group?
The operation is ongoing. First of all, we didn't see any acknowledgement of Israel to that. And we had the interview of President Herzog today for Sky News. And he said that Israel is not connected to the bombings or attacks. But assessing the damage in Lebanon, they're assessing the ongoing attacks and all of the bombings of the beepers, which is still ongoing. There are casualties of the barrage of command of the Radwan members. And it's still ongoing, the assessment of how much damage there is. I can note that Israel has published that in the retaliation attacks from all of the bombardments of Israel, some hundreds of rocket launchers were destroyed in the, let's say, warehouses of weapons in South Lebanon, in the Bekaa and other areas.
So they clearly are shaken or injured in some way. But what are you hearing in Lebanon? I mean, what is Hezbollah's aim now? Are they still trying to avoid all-out war, do you think?
We see different voices. I will answer about Hezbollah, but there are other interesting voices. Hezbollah is proclaiming that no damage is done and they're going to attack and they're going to proceed with previous plans that they had of attacking Israel. But we see other voices. First of all, today is Sunday. On each Sunday, prominent Christian leaders and religious figures hold their Sunday masses. There is a publication today of the Archbishop of Beirut, Uda. He did criticize Israel in his sermon, but he did call for some reasoning in the conduct of the country. And I do believe that some of the calling is for Lebanese also to restrain themselves. I saw an interesting publication, which is new on Lebanon 24, of a new plan, according to the article, of the Druze leader, Mr. Junblad, Walid Junblad. He repeated in the article the plan of the France to Jean-Yves Le Drian, the French mediator, to broker peace and a deal, but he added that the Saudis are also backing this plan. This is a repeat, nothing new, of the same peace plan that the French and the Americans are trying to broker in Lebanon. And we saw the voice also of President Herzog saying that Israel is not interested in war. So there are voices calling for restraint and maybe going towards the path of an agreement, which will be either following a war or preventing this war.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that war between Israel and Hezbollah is inevitable, if not in the coming days, then in the near future?
We see that the escalation is ever increasing, and it increased significantly in the last days. Following yesterday's rocket launching and very heavy rockets bombarding the Israel Valley and close to Haifa, which is highly escalating the situation. But I do repeat all of these calls to restrain the situation. I can note a publication in Lebanon about the American ambassador in Beirut, Lisa A. Johnson, meeting the Lebanese Prime Minister of the interim government, Najib Mikati. It was between the two series of deeper blasts, and they talked about the situation, and I presume that the ambassador also tried to promote the initiative of Mr. Amos Hochstein, who is the special envoy, to broker a deal between Israel and Lebanon.
Now, Benjamin Netanyahu said today that Israel sent a very clear message to Hezbollah, saying that if Hezbollah didn't get the message, Israel would ensure that it would, in fact, get the message. Do you think Hezbollah has gotten the message?
I presume that Hezbollah proclaims one thing, but assessing the damages and assessing what was caused by the attacks on the other hand. Hezbollah doesn't always proclaim the real situation. But I do want to repeat Prime Minister Netanyahu's, and I'm quoting him, we're on a crossroad. And by noting crossroad, we're saying this is either escalating more the situation or choosing now to promote the agreement, which will call for Hezbollah terrorists to be 10 kilometers to the north across the Litani River.
All right. Well, Dr. Books, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you so much.
And on Friday, in a major blow to the Hezbollah terrorist organization, Israel eliminated one of its most senior commanders, the head of the group's elite Radwan force, a man responsible for hundreds of American deaths. But who was Ibrahim Akil? All the answers in the following report.
The IDF confirmed that it eliminated a senior Hezbollah commander, Ibrahim Akil, along with other senior commanders of the group's Radwan force, an elite terrorist unit. Akil, who was also known by his aliases Tahsin and Abdel Kadir, was one of the founding members of Hezbollah and a senior member of terror group's top body, the Jihad Council. The United States accuses him of being one of the leading architects behind the deadly bombing of the United States Embassy in Beirut in April 1983, which killed 63 people, and the bombing of the U.S. Marine Corps barracks in the same year, which killed 241 U.S. personnel. Akil was also responsible for directing the abduction of American and German hostages in Lebanon. The United States has listed him as a specially designated global terrorist and placed a $7 million bounty on his head. Akil was instrumental in turning the terror group from a small shadowy militia into Lebanon's most powerful military and political organization. Akil's death marks the second time in less than 2 months that Israel has eliminated a senior Hezbollah commander in Beirut. In July, Israel took out Fuad Shukr, the group's top military commander. Hezbollah mourned his death and has already announced a replacement, Ali Reda Abbas, who worked closely with Akil since the 1990s.
Meanwhile, the war continues in Gaza. Day 352 of the war. Over the weekend, IDF airstrikes targeted 20 Hamas sites across the Gaza Strip, including the terrorists behind the murder of the 6 Israeli hostages, including Israeli-American citizen Hirsch Goldberg-Polin. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Over the weekend, the Air Force attacked about 20 terror targets using fighter jets and aircraft throughout the Gaza Strip. Among the targets attacked terror infrastructure, military buildings, and terrorist squads. IDF airstrikes targeted Hamas operatives who have attempted to reorganize at a former Gaza school. A number of terrorists were killed in the strike. There were also reports of injuries to civilians the gunmen use as human shields. Hamas was using the Al-Falah school in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City to plan and carry out attacks against IDF troops. The school has been inactive during the war, and it's also been serving as a shelter for displaced Gazans. Among those killed was Mahmoud Mansour, a key figure in Hamas military intelligence. Also killed were 2 Hamas members believed to have carried out the murders of 6 Israeli hostages last month in the Gaza tunnel. The forces of the Givati Brigade have been operating in the Rafah area. The fighters have eliminated dozens of terrorists, located weapons, and destroyed terror infrastructure and tunnel shafts. While securing the humanitarian access, the forces identified armed men attempting to loot a humanitarian aid truck. The forces directed drones that located the gunmen who escaped in a vehicle and eliminated them using an Air Force aircraft.
And the IDF on Sunday shut down Qatari news channel Al Jazeera's offices in Ramallah in the West Bank. The news station filmed and aired live the IDF soldiers entering the building and handing an order over to the station chief for the closure of the station for 45 days. Israel has accused the channel as being a threat to national security for its incitement and support of terrorism against Israeli civilians. Earlier this year, in April, the Knesset passed an emergency bill to ban the TV station in Israel for 45 days, with further 45-day ban subject to court approval. This, however, did not affect broadcasts from the West Bank or Gaza. And with hostage deal for ceasefire talks ongoing, pessimism is growing as U.S. officials announce that reaching an agreement in the near future is unlikely. ILTV's Deva Klein has the details.
The ongoing negotiations between Israel and Hamas regarding a potential hostage deal have hit a roadblock, with U.S. officials expressing growing pessimism. According to a report in the Wall Street Journal, a deal may not be reached before the end of President Biden's term. U.S. officials have privately admitted that an agreement between Israel and Hamas is not expected anytime soon. Despite earlier claims from the White House that the deal was, quote, 90% complete, key issues including a prisoner exchange and control of the Philadelphia corridor remain unresolved. One U.S. official told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "No deal is imminent. I'm not sure it ever gets done." This uncertainty comes amid heightened tensions following a Hezbollah pager attack and the killing of 6 hostages in Rafah earlier this month, further complicating diplomatic efforts. An unnamed Arab official echoed the sentiment, saying, quote, "Everyone is in wait-and-see mode until after the U.S. election. The outcome of the next administration may determine the path forward." Hamas's refusal to finalize a deal even after U.S. and Israeli concessions has led to frustrations. Critics also claim Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu may be stalling the process. Meanwhile, families of the 7 remaining U.S. hostages expressed their frustration with the lack of progress in talks during a meeting with U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. While negotiations remain stalled, both U.S. and Israeli officials stress they will continue efforts to reach a deal, viewing it as essential to preventing further escalations in the region.
And Reverend Franklin Graham, one of America's most influential evangelists, visited Israel last week. ILTV's Maayan Hoffman had a chance to ask him about his trip.
Reverend Franklin Graham, considered America's most prominent evangelist, was in Israel last week to dedicate 2 armored ambulances to Magen David Dome and lay the cornerstone of a new emergency dispatch center in Avshalom on the southern border. The president of Samaritan's Purse, Graham, has provided or committed to 42 rescue vehicles, including 28 armored ambulances and 2 dispatch stations. 14 of these ambulances are already in service. The organization donated them in January to replenish the fleet after Hamas targeted and destroyed rescue vehicles during the October attack. The ambulances were dedicated to 3 American Israelis murdered by Hamas, Hirsch Goldberg Polin and Roe and Smadar Idan. Love for Israel is a fundamental part of Graham's belief system. He has been in the country many times since the Hamas massacre last year. In a short phone interview with ILTV in the media line, he said, "I believe Israel, the nation, and I believe Israel, the Jewish people, are God's chosen people. As Christians, we stand with Israel. We want to support Israel, and we do all that we can, especially in these times of great trouble." He told ILTV and TML that he supports Republican candidate Donald Trump for president, and he's confident that if Trump gets into office, he would maintain a good relationship with whoever runs Israel because he loves Israel. Graham's visit coincided with the formation of a new pro-Israel Christian umbrella organization, the Conference of Presidents of Christian Organizations in Support of Israel. The organization, which will be patterned after the Conference of Presidents of Major Jewish Organizations, will bring together dozens of like-minded groups to magnify their influence. Already, some 100 evangelical Christians are involved in the group, which met for the first time last week in Washington, D.C. from September 17th to 18th, at the same time as the popular IAC National Summit, which brought together thousands of Jews from across the spectrum.
And now, in other news, some positive sports news out of Israel. The International Olympic Committee officially decided to include flag football in the 2028 Olympic Games last October, only days after the start of the war in Gaza. Team Israel suspended its program as players joined their reserve units, exchanging team for IDF uniforms. The team returned to practice only months ago and had exceptional results at the World and European Championships. Joining us now in the studio to discuss this journey is Team Israel men's head coach, Jonathan Tekak. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, can you describe the American football in Israel for our viewers who may not even know that we have American football here in Israel?
Sure. Well, first off, it's very exciting. It's fun. It's engaging. There are over 2,000 active participants in football here in Israel. They come from different backgrounds. So some are homegrown Israelis, some are folks that have made Aliyah. There are 10 different club leagues in servicing 15 different municipalities throughout the country as well. And I guess what we'll talk about today is the crown jewel, the 7 national teams that get to go out and represent Israel abroad. And yeah, it's a great time to be around football here in Israel. It's one of the fastest growing sports in Israel.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, you know, I want to ask, how did October 7th impact the league, the players, the teams?
Obviously, October 7th is a devastating day in the history of the Jewish people, a very dark day for Israel as well. But our team members in our football community they responded with immense courage, and they've shown perseverance throughout. The first part was we had many team members that were called up to active service. So whether they were tackle, whether they were national team players, immediately they became active duty. They responded. They were in Gaza. They've been in the West Bank. They've been on the north, serving the country. We also were hit with a lot of loss, tragically. We lost team members at the Nova Festival. We lost members that first day in combat. And then at the same time, there was hope and joy as we had team members in responding that first day on October 7th, helping save people at the kibbutzim, and also even had team members that were part of the successful rescue operation back in June.
And I want to ask, because the International Olympic Committee announced that flag football will now be an official Olympic sport in Los Angeles in 2028. And Team Israel was recently at the World Championship, this summer in Helsinki, at the U17 Championship in Serbia. Are we doing well enough to qualify for the Olympics in LA? Well,
the short answer is absolutely. There's a lot to be done. But, Israel football is definitely known throughout the world as being very innovative from a schematics perspective, from a game management and strategy perspective. So we're there. Most recently in Finland, the women, they qualified for the playoffs, the round of 16 before bowing out. The men's program, we went 6-1. We had the second best record in the tournament. We beat top 10 opponents in Germany, in Panama. We also defeated Great Britain and Denmark that have historically had very, very strong programs and still do. And then most recently in Serbia, I was able to be on that trip with the under-17 team. The under-17 team has not lost a game since its inception. So since 2022, they've been the European champs. And they beat Great Britain, they beat Germany, they beat Austria, they beat the Czech Republic, and then they beat Italy for the gold medal game. And what's so incredible about that experience is being on the podium with those young men, and how Tikva playing, tears in their eyes, and all that they've been through this year, and seeing them achieve is something that will stay with me forever. Really impressive and very moving. And so I want to ask, what can our viewers who are watching now, what can they do to help support Team Israel? Well, the nice thing about Am Israel, right, is that we get behind things that we're passionate about. And there's a tremendous opportunity in front of us, right, to qualify for the Olympics. I think the first thing is go onto the website, get to know us, sign up for the newsletter. We're going to have a U.S. tour coming up in 2025. So that's the second part. If you'd like to support, and if you're watching from abroad, and you're going to be in one of those cities, which will be in the New Jersey, New York area, in the Boston area, in Foxborough, in Minneapolis, Dallas, and Miami, and you want to get involved, contact us, support us. We have people on the ground that are supporting us through that journey. And then lastly, we're competing against some top-notch competition across the world that have exceptional resources. So the thing about us is we're primarily privately funded. So by donating to our cause, we're able to directly impact the athletes. And every donor, every donation counts. And it's going to help us be in a position to compete and give everything we have so we can qualify for the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Absolutely. And for our viewers, you can scan the QR code on the screen now. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for having me. And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country as temperatures continue to drop ahead of winter, reaching lows of around 22 degrees Celsius or 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies and warm weather are expected as temperatures should be reaching highs of around 27 degrees Celsius or 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Medarga Velazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.